test. Are you sure you want this to be public?
Why?
Well, if you have it as public, it advertises it on the YouTube page. Like, but if you have it unlisted, it's just kind of for people in the group.
Mine, I kind of discussed already with some members that
Okay.
so the other people from outside the group can watch it if they wanted to. I mean,
They can if you post it in the group or if they have access to the YouTube page. It's easy for them to access it. I mean, this is like for everyone at all.
That's okay.
Yeah. Good.
What's happened?
No, Jasmine was just double checking if I wanted YouTube videos for public.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's fine.
No.
No.
Why?
Why not? I don't know.
Like, at least that these ones, because they're for free, it's like,
That's fair. Did you set it up already? Oh, did you set it up already?
it's just the OBS.
Oh yeah, so it works. It works fine, right?
I just opened OBS, I haven't done into it at all.
Oh, yeah, it's already started streaming though, so. Never mind, never mind. Alright, yeah, that's fine. Did you set it up already?
It's just the OBS.
Oh, we'll start up in a bit, guys. Sorry.
Oh, so
Oh yeah, so it works. It works fine, right?
I just opened OBS, I haven't done into it at all.
Oh, yeah, it's already started streaming though, so. Never mind, never mind. Alright, yeah, that's fine. Did you set it up already?
It's just the OBS.
Oh, we'll start up in a bit, guys. Sorry.
Oh, so
Oh yeah, so it works. It works fine, right?
I just opened OBS, I haven't done into it at all.
Oh, yeah, it's already started streaming though, so. Never mind, never mind. Alright, yeah, that's fine. Did you set it up already?
It's just the OBS.
Oh, we'll start up in a bit, guys. Sorry.
Oh, so
Oh yeah, so it works. It works fine, right?
I just opened OBS, I haven't done into it at all.
Oh, yeah, it's already started streaming though, so. Never mind, never mind. Alright, yeah, that's fine. Did you set it up already?
It's just the OBS.
Oh, we'll start up in a bit, guys. Sorry.
Oh, so
Oh yeah, so it works. It works fine, right?
Yeah, so go back. Hey Alex. I've got to delete this channel, but I'll play it. Why are you putting the general chat? Because we don't need it. Like, there's no one chats for everything. Oh. No, really, because I just come, just need to go check the MC room, see if anyone's there, and I'll be right back. That was it. Welcome. Bye, Cassie.
That's a stretch. That's a stretch. It's really...
Alex.
Wow. Oh, that's crazy information.
What is it? What? It's your agent? Yeah. Oh my god, really? I was like,
Oh, cool, thanks. Let's go.
yeah. Why?
Alright, so we'll start now. You want to turn off the light? Yeah, turn off the lights. Cassie, can you turn off the lights? It's a sass in this club. So today we're mainly just covering force basically. So part 2, I'll try to explain it a bit slower and talk a bit louder because last time it was a bit too quiet. But Force is basically a book by Mike Matisse. It's essentially a revision of gesture, so it's not necessarily advanced concepts, but more just trying to approach gesture from a completely new point of view. The book is not it's just a different lens to view it from. It's mainly used by like animation industry people who really like simplifying their shapes and creating more gestural rhythms through the body, not through advanced contour and like having super extreme detail, but simplifying as much as possible. You don't have to draw like the book or anything like the art inside of it. You more just have to use the drawings they use and understand what they're trying to get at and use that theory they've applied to your own work. And like reading the book itself and looking at the drawings, it can be a bit off-putting in terms of how over the top Mike Matisse pushes his drawings, but it's very much just about how well designed his figures are and how they lead the eye across. So TB Choi, these are TB Choi's notes. I recommend reading them if you can. They're on ArtStation. You just look up TB Choi's notes. They're basically just a short dissertation into the force and how she applies it personally to her own work. You can see already, like, it's very, very applicable for animation, how you simplify the gesture faster so you can make the movement between the forms extremely rapidly. But yeah, the less complicated the line, the faster it reads, basically what this is saying. Today's schedule just be primarily the theories that we're covering. Then we're going to break things down with lemon slices, which is another theory popularized by Ethan Becker. And then we'll do feedback. No, we'll take a break, then do a feedback, and then do demo. All right. So the first thing about force, which is kind of a bit culty, kind of a bit dumb, but you have to use more descriptive words when you describe your gesture. So it's kind of cheesy, but it's proven in linguistics that if you use your language, it directly affects how you think. The language you use personally directly affects how you think. So use strong vocab to describe like descriptive words that describe the arc of the gesture. So don't think about, there's just a gesture going from the arm to the leg. Think about it shooting into the leg, crashing into the thigh, easing back into the elbow, and pivoting across the neck. That describes the arc of the gesture and how fast it goes and how slow it goes. You use that vocab mentally in your own head and as well as describing to other people, and you'll notice like you'll emphasize more of that motion within your work. It's similar to how like in painting, how if you use we use the word green to cover like an extremely large part of the wheel, but In reality, it's close to like there's lime greens, there's close to yellow, and there's mint closer to cyan. If we use more descriptive words, we can like essentially communicate what we're trying to get across, as opposed to just having a broad yellowy green, bluish green. We need to be more specific with our language. So the first major theory in force is the idea of leading edge. It's essentially a focal point. So you got to think about, it's similar to how in the previous gesture, how we talked about where it's coming from and where it goes. It's very much where it goes. So you think about if you were in animation, the next pose within this sequence of poses. So if you imagine the first pose on the left, that man's like kind of crouching down. He's like his hands, like arms on his knees. If you push it further, his back would push back, and his arms would go forward. So the leading edge that like you can choose where you want your leading edge to be, depending on where you think the motion will go. So the leading edge in this case is that corner of the elbow and those knees, because I think his knees would raise up higher and his arms would go down lower, and his back would push back further. It's the same for the next four. Like the most obvious one is definitely the UFC fighter on the right side. How the leading edge would definitely be the foot, the heel of the foot, because that's where the next motion is going to go. It's going to crash down into the fighter on the floor, and you can design your leading edge around where you want your eye to go. So naturally, the focal point of any figure will always be the head, no matter what. It's just the way our human brain is encoded. But the gesture of the figure is completely different. You can have completely different gesture that doesn't lead to the head if you wanted to, and then if you have a gesture that doesn't lead your focal point to the head, you're, instead of emphasizing just the emotion of the face, you're now emphasizing the emotion of the body as well. So think about the leading edge. And yeah, it is somewhat arbitrary in a way. You can choose where you want leading edge to be. If you can choose, like for the third figure, I chose to emphasize, like to show that the leading edge would be his hand, because I think it almost looks like he's holding a weight down, and it's like he's crashing like a fist or a boulder or something, and he's holding it down with his hands. I feel like the leading edge would be the next pose in his sequence would be his body crumbling even further and his arms going even further down. That's where I choose his leading edge to be. But if you think his motion instead is like maybe like he's swinging his elbow up on the left side, you can choose your leading edge to be that left side. And then from then on, you'll design all your rhythms and lines to go towards that left elbow, for example. So the next theory, this is probably the biggest one in force, is that essentially every single line in the world now is a straight. So you kind of have to suspend your disbelief for this in a way. But imagine every single line in the world ever is a straight. There are no curved lines. The only reason a curved line exists is when a force hits that line. So depending on the intensity of that force, that line becomes, extreme curve like the far left one, or a soft C, or a really gentle C. The depending on how hard you hit that line, the recoil of it will show how fast your eye will go into that line and then out of the line. So for example, the left one's very comet looking. It's essentially, it's the most common in the elbow or other kind of small points like the fingers even. If you analyze like how you actually look at the figure, when you look into the elbow, your eye usually bounces straight into the corner and straight out. So depending on how curved the axis is, so the axis would be the tip of the curve. So where a curve changes direction, the more stronger the recoil going back. So yeah, you can think of it as essentially lines being punched, and then when you punch a line, it will eventually bounce back. That's one way of thinking about it, quite simply. So this also applies to bouncing the eye, essentially. This is the other main theory in force, and kind of the main crux of the entire thing. It's just about where to bounce the eye. So it uses curves. So this curve exists because a force has hit it counterly. So for example, in that left leg, the curve goes down and hits to the corner of that knee. That knee pinballs the eye, because it's a straight, back into the calf of the leg, and it goes down to the bottom of the foot, where it's now straight because there's heavy force applying it onto the ground. You got to think about how a gesture from the back, the rhythm of the back, goes into the buttocks and then follows the curve, because it's like almost like a slide, and it slides up and into the knee. That knee's a straight, so it's a hard stop, and it bounces back into the calf again and back into the feet. This is the main crux of force, basically. Just learning how to bounce the eye between straights and curves. And it will also apply this to the lemon theory later on as well. Yep. Yeah, and that's just the applied force. The orange is the applied force. So it's showing how harsh the force going into those curves are. Generally, the strongest applied force, so the one with the most tension, that is where your leading edge is for the most part. That's just a general rule of thumb. So the next thing is about shape tapering. Human bodies have a natural taper in our shapes. So generally, the largest shape in our body is around the torso, and then the further you go out from the limbs, the smaller the smaller your shapes taper, so towards your fingers. And because of that, we have a natural taper. Our eyes naturally follow the start, like the largest shape, and then go down to this thinnest shape. So our eyes naturally, if a man was T posing essentially, or A posing, all the force or the gesture will just be going straight out in a straight direction. So the best resource I've had on shape tapering and shape design essentially is Cynics's shape appeal video. Basically, the analogy he gives is that whatever shape you draw, imagine there's a million little ants or people in it, and a fire has started in that shape. Where do the people leave once that fire starts? 9 out of 10 times, okay, not 9, 10 out of 10 times realistically, they will always leave at the smallest point of that shape. So if it's a triangle, they will leave at that tip of the corner, because that's just how our eye naturally leads. Another thing about shapes is always use obtuse angles. Don't use jaggy corners that are like smaller than 90 degrees, because you need obtuse angles to flow the eye between the shape. Because if you have tons of small jaggy angles, your eyes will just get stuck in those small little corners you create. So for example, this is the first example. Your eye, for most people here, assuming you're looking at not something else, your eye will naturally have started on the left side, the largest bit of the shape, and gone straight down. Do you guys feel like the arrow on the top is faster than the arrow on the bottom? Yeah. So because of that, like that's an obvious example of how to taper your shapes. You can imagine this as a thigh, and how the top of the thigh is really large, and it tapers down to the bottom of the knee. And then you crash that force from the curve of your buttocks into your thigh to your knee. That's a perfect example of how to taper your shapes in the body. So always taper your shapes towards where you want your leading edge, your focal point. Another example here. So your eye most likely will have naturally started on that top left, that large triangle shape. If your eye was slightly to the left of that first of the arrow, you will have followed and hit the left side of the arrow and then bounce all the way back to the right. Or if your eye was a bit to the right of that large shape, you've gone down to the right and then bounced all the way back up to the left. Depends where your eye started. But no matter what, even though the arrow points to the left, your eye will naturally go to the right side eventually because of the natural shape tapering. On the bottom, you have another arrow, which has 2 arrows on both sides. I feel like if you looked at it, your eye would just start on one of the edges and just bounce back and forth because you have no real sense of direction. There's no sense of tapering, so your eye doesn't know where to go. This shape could go either way, but it's very obvious the shape on the top goes to the right, no matter what. Even though you put an arrow on it, it still goes to the right. It's an empty slide. Oh no. And last thing is lemons. This is a fairly big theory about force. Let me just read my notes, sorry. Yeah, okay. So essentially a method of seeing straights and curves. It's a lot more precise of a method than just kind of feeling the intuition and just relying on anatomy knowledge of bone versus curve, because it applies more to gesture rather than contours, basically. So Ethan Becker released a video recently where he talked about lemon slices. So imagine a lemon sliced in half, so you have slices of lemons, and how you can use that singular shape to demonstrate what the entire body's gesture is. So basically, this shape, this lemon shape, this quarter circle, is a balance and a counterbalance. So when you have one lemon, you need another lemon opposing it to balance it. So if you imagine each lemon is like a scale, it balances along those scales. Every single limb itself can be broken down into lemons, and every single limb has its own counterbalance, as well as counterbalancing the entire body. I'm going to show you the demo real quick. For example, this is a way of simplifying the body of the lemons. The lemons, straights are the straights are essentially showing where the force is going, like where the direction is going, and the curve shows the how it's getting there. So, for example, you have in the top left one, you can obviously tell that the top of the ribs is pointing down towards the trunk, the lower trunk, the stomach. The curve of the ribs on the right side shows how harsh he's getting there. So if you made a figure with only straights, for example, on the left side, you can tell where everything's going. It's super obvious the direction of the gesture, but you can't tell how it's getting there. It all feels the same. It feels like he's getting from his arm to the bottom about the same as he's getting from the top of his shoulder to the bottom of his buttocks to his leg. There's no description of how fast he's getting there. On the right, there's a lot of gesture and there's a lot of form and a lot of whatever, but there's no solidity. There's no clear direction. It's just more like there's gesture going everywhere. You need solidity within the straights to describe it. So back to this. The implied form also, there's also implied form in the lemon because the lemon is one curve and one straight. The straight is the first edge and the curve is technically two separate planes of the front plane and the side plane. And it's essentially saying that these lemons are basically boxes and you're seeing two of the current planes and maybe a third on the bottom. And this is a way of simplifying that idea into the figure. So yeah, straights show direction, curves explain how to get there. That's probably the most important concept of the lemon. And that's just like that thing on the right, it's cut off slightly, but that's like a fourth shape. You can basically see how it's just a bunch of lemon slices stuck together, and you can see where it's going on the bottom and how fast it's getting there with the curve on the top. So this is probably the best example I have of like how you can use lemons to break down your figures. The lemons, once you've put them down, are essentially a roadmap to describe those straights and curves. So I will always, once I have the lemon figures down, you can keep them simpler or more complicated. Like these ones here are a fair bit more complicated, but if you want to keep it simple, you can as well. I prefer them simpler for the most part. I always follow this rhythm and counter rhythm. So on the left side of the figure, you can see like on the bottom left, that lemon drawing, there's a rhythm of the top of the thigh going down, hitting the knee, and then a counter rhythm of it following the calf along the other side. It's always this rhythm and counter rhythm of these lemons. They always go back and forth to balance the figure. And once I have these lemons down, I always see where the curve is going and where the straight is going. And I will follow that roadmap even when I add more detail to my contours. So like even though I added more detail to the knees and whatnot, it still feels like everything that was a curve in the lemons is still a curve in the finished drawing. Everything that was a straight in the lemons is still a straight in the drawing. This is just a way, not necessarily simpler, but more exact and precise method, I'd say, of figuring out where your straights and curves are in body. I think it's a super easy way to break down the body as a whole. Even the figure on the right, the lemons, I've combined that entire right leg into just one lemon slice because I felt like the direction of that leg was essentially all put on one side and the force of it was on the other side. So I combined it to one, and you can see, even though I added the detail of two lemons, basically two curves to describe the thigh and the calf in the final drawing, it still feels like both those edges are curves and the right edge is a straight. So that's basically that's basically most of my force notes. Does anyone have any questions? Because it's actually quite complicated in terms of a bunch of random things. Yep.
Can you explain the little ants and shapes again?
Yep. So it's probably easier if I just draw it. So if you have any single shape you make, imagine if you had a million little ants or little people inside this shape. Also imagine this line's connected. You now start a fire in it. Like naturally, where do you think the people, if this was a room, like you were looking at a top-down view, where do you think everyone would go? To this edge here, right? So that feels like the exit. Even though I've implied no exit at all, it still feels like an exit. That's exactly the power of shape design. You know exactly where the shape is going because it tapers towards that direction. And you can do that with any, but the reason I said not to use jaggy shapes and things that are like non-obtuse, so obtuse is like this, So it's more than 90 degrees. Acute would be this, less than 90 degrees. Don't use acute things because you can make a shape and it will always go to the acute corner because acute corners naturally taper. That's basically the theory. Your exit will be at acute tapering, while the rest of the shape will be obtuse. Because if it's obtuse, it's kind of mathematical, but if it's obtuse, it means there's no way for it to taper in. Do you get that better? Or? Yeah.
Does the lemon theory like still work with male like anatomy?
Yeah, works perfectly fine. It works. It's just a way of breaking it down. As long as you have one way of having. No, it just works with everything really. It works with like animals even as well. Any sort of form that needs to like exist in the world and has a sense of balance, you can put lemons on it, because it's not necessarily a method or strict method. It's more just a way of seeing what is straight and what is curved. Like if you think of it like a Heads and Shoulders shampoo bottle, like that's literally just one giant lemon. And you can see the way it tapers. Like there's a strong structural side, and it tapers to the top. It's like a very slight taper to the top, because it's slightly thinner than the bottom. You can see how your eye just goes up that edge, and it's a very gentle curve, I'd say. If you made it harsher, the shampoo bottle, like it's like very subtle industrial design or like stuff. But basically, if you made that curve harsher, people would not like it as much. It wouldn't be as appealing. Yeah. Any other major questions about this force theory?
Yeah, in that slide that you were showing where the force was hitting in that drawing that you did, yeah,
This one?
that one there, yeah. So in the one before, you had it pinballing down the bottom part of the leg. But how come? So right here, sorry, not that one there. So how come it doesn't hit there and then hit there? Because you didn't show the orange in those areas. That makes sense.
I just didn't draw it. That's my bad. Yeah, there should just be a bit of orange here, basically.
And can you put an orange on the straight, or does that not make sense?
Orange on this straight, because there's nothing hitting it. This curve here hits into here, because every line, like in the applied force theory from the start, every line is a straight. The only reason curves exist is because applied force has been applied to it. If it's a straight, it means there's no applied force on it. That's kind of the basic idea of it. Or if it's a straight, it's a piece of bone that's so rigid that no matter how much force you apply to it, it will stay as a straight. That's the other thing I should have mentioned, actually. Yeah. So it's a bone, no matter how much impact you put on it, it will never bend because it's pure bone. That's why straights in the body are always bone in terms of
Okay,
those
so
landmarks.
You can still have like force rebounding off a straight, but it would just be like the bone that's keeping it straight, right?
Yep. So you can bounce off, like, for example, like if you had a rhythm going from, yeah, this is a pretty good example. Like you have this rhythm of all this flesh, all this force going into the torso, it would still hit this edge of the bone of the pelvis here, because that bone cannot bend. But this would bend, this flesh would bend and have applied force in it, but the bone can't bend. Yeah. All right, any other major questions before I get into like feedback or?
I do have a question.
Yep.
So when you apply a lemon to a limb, I
Yep.
imagine the curved side will be like the muscle that's bulging, and then the flat side could be the muscle that's stretched out, like the tricep stretches out.
Yep.
When you put your arm like that.
So that'd be the pinch and the pull, yeah.
But what if the arm or leg or whatever is only slightly bent, and there is no clear way to orient the lemon?
So that's where it comes to being more decisive. So naturally there is, so you're basically saying, imagine like if it wasn't as tense, right? So it wasn't as obvious.
Yeah.
That's where it comes to being decisive. So you force it out. You decide this is a straight, that's a curve. And like I said, the lemon stuff is like a roadmap, so you can build on top of it. So once you put that lemon down, all you're doing is you're gonna make that straighter than the curve. That straighter section can be like 4% or 5% straighter, as long as the other side is 5% curvier, right? So if you want to show like a lack of tension, not much force in it, when you come to drawing the actual contour and like you're doing the details, you just make sure you just keep that straight side relatively straight compared to the curved side.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the feedback. If you have any questions, we can revisit this at any time, like, because I'll start applying forced to the feedback as well. And yeah, just have any questions anytime, just shout them out. Are they all just on the Discord?
Do you want to put the PowerPoint in Discord? Or...
I'll let it after the
Yeah.
I probably should have set this up earlier actually. Sorry. Yeah, you can just take a short 5 minute break right now if you want. Bone cereal in your leg, yeah, that's right.
No. Just I forgot to scroll in there. That's all. There you go.
Oh,
Just share your screen. I don't know. Whatever. I think it's that one. Yeah, that one. Screen too. There you go.
alright, cheers.
Just people who don't want to do YouTube.
Alright.
So, maybe ask you the questions. Yeah. Okay.
No, he doesn't. He just leave it on.
What you look like to know?
I don't like this one. It's not working.
What?
You got me excited.
Alright, I'll start back up now. This is Alex. Hello, how are you? Yeah.
Be better, but thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, that's great. How long did these take?
5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Yes.
Alright, this one as well? Okay. Cool, so are you just focusing on like simplifying stuff or? Are you trying to simplify this stuff or?
I don't drop.
Oh no, that's okay. So for the main thing, I'll just say you have to. The first main thing is you have to emphasize your pinch and your pull. Did you draw a line of action through these?
Oh, like line.
I just wanted
That's okay. The main thing, for example, for this one, like there's a really, really heavy pinch and pull here. So the pull's this, the pinch is this. I'll just emphasize that in this drawing. And you can't just draw through. So just make sure you have that exact like angle of it, and you can get that pretty easily by just finding the angle of the hips and the shoulders. So example, this one should be more angled like this. What's this eraser? So now that we've learned about like shape tapering as well, you can see how like a lot of your shapes are kind of like symmetrical in a way, right? So if you make one side of the shape a lot larger, Just like how her thigh has a natural taper to it. You make that a lot larger, and you thin it down. And same with the knee, you make the top of the knee. Sorry, make that a straight more. And you taper it, oh, and then you taper it back down. And even finding like kind of shorthands for everything. So, especially in have you done much live drawing before in person? Have you done much live drawing before in person? Okay, so a big thing is like you kind of have to find shorthands for certain things, like the hands and the feet especially. One easy shorthand, especially for the feet, is just a triangle, and that just describes the foot, and then you can just tilt that triangle whenever you want to like show things going down. That's a pretty bad one. Like that, right? And same with the hands. You're just having this like triangle with where it's like one strong, especially when it's touching the floor, having like a strong straight. Example for this, like I would not draw all this detail within like, especially if it was a shorter 2-minute, 1-minute pose, you wouldn't have the time to draw all that detail. But it's also quite important in that 1-minute pose to like describe the points of contact on the ground, right? So I'll just do it through like a simple triangle, and on one side is a straight, and one side's kind of arcing down. And that kind of describes the force of it as well. This one's a lot better, I feel like, than the first one. It communicates the straight and curve like really well. I think you've done really well on that. You actually have like lemons, like low-key you have lemons here, like building already. That's kind of amazing that you kind of like intuitively somehow figure that out.
I watched like a video before that you set up.
They even make a
I
video.
hadn't already watched it before, but I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that existed, so yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I'm glad we stumbled upon the same video. Yeah. With this, I'd say just in terms of gesture, I think it's kind of a lack of a leading edge might be one thing. Like in drawing in general, in terms of this critique, I'm focusing mainly on the gesture aspects. There's definitely like tons of proportion that everyone can improve on, especially me as well, and all this other stuff. But I'm mainly focusing pretty much just on gesture for this. I think the gesture is weakened because you don't have a strong leading edge, and you've also slightly under-exaggerated the line of actions like this. But you've slightly under-exaggerated it, you see, and it's more like you've bent it more like that. That's one thing. Like from the first presentation, I talked about how you always exaggerate your line of action, always exaggerate your gesture, because you're more likely to be right than you are wrong. So this is one of those cases where I think the gesture is just a bit too. That's all right. But it's just yeah, just like especially just in terms of line of action. This is just one of the things that's just you should always just do. These lemons are pretty great. Like you can easily tell, like this is a straight and it hits on this elbow here and then goes back down. One thing I say is like having asymmetrical shapes. So this is just kind of building on top of the shape design thing. All your shapes are kind of these cylindrical objects and they're kind of symmetrical in a way. But all you can do is you can taper the symmetry. So instead of like this can start symmetrical, but because of the way our body works, the insertion of certain muscles naturally have this asymmetry throughout as it goes throughout a limb. So you can see that this shape on her, on the figure, would actually end closer to like here. And then this shape would start here. So it's this like slight, weird lasso. So there's this like slight asymmetry to things that make gesture slightly stronger because you have this force essentially leading up, hitting where that elbow would be, and then leading back down. But if you have cylindrical shapes, it's hard to tell which side is like the forceful side, like which side is pushing in and which side is pushing out, I guess, right? Yeah. And this last one's this one's really good. I think you actually have the force count like pretty well, actually. Like the live action, all that. You've actually exaggerated a bit, and it's really pushed it. And it's really good. This one's longer, right? Yeah, that's great. So if you take really long to draw, like this is definitely, and you're still, I can tell you're still thinking about force, you're not purely thinking about contour still. So that's really good. It shows that like you actually are thinking about force and not just falling into the trap of just drawing completely what you see, like a photocopier almost. So yeah, definitely try these longer ones and just get faster with the longer ones and eventually go down to the shorter ones. And you'll be able to draw like these ones like just instantly pretty much. In terms of this, in terms of gesture, yeah, so did you mean to push up the legs?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's more like about to leap, kind of like a ballerina or like a frog or something. Yeah, that's cool. That's so sick. I think one aspect of it is that she has this kind of shape here where she has this like inverted triangle basically. And you can tell there's like a lot of force going here and it's like propelling her up. You can still have that exact same thing. And also like I'd push it kind of even further, honestly. Like it's very good. It's getting there, but you kind of push her, so she's like almost like a rocket in a way, where you have all this force leading down to the legs, and you can raise your knees like here, and then push down, and that feels like he's more about to spring in a way. If you get that, that's another thing as well, that 45 degrees are like always the most intense angle. Flatten this out, like you flatten it out essentially, and that's kind of like, it's kind of really cool in the sense of a graphic element. But one of the thing that this the original reference actually has going for it is that these are angled and they feel more tense because it's on a angle that's closer to 45 degrees. But yeah, this one's going really good. Thank you for submitting. I appreciate it. Is Cassie?
Yo,
E. So let me just move these away.
this one took longer than the others.
Yeah. Oh, so these two are just
Yeah,
okay.
I don't know, I just wanted to show like the line of action structure behind it.
Yeah, no, that's sick. Appreciate that. Yeah, this is sick. So how long does this take you to say?
Around 15, 30 minutes, 20 minutes maybe.
Right. Yeah, this is cool. Let me just think for a bit. Sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Appreciating it.
I think I under exaggerated a little bit the line of action,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, that's correct. Like you've actually have under exaggerated a bit. You've pushed it further back, and that might be a thing of like, the more detail you add, kind of the less gesture it goes.
yeah, it's,
Yeah.
I did the line of action and then like I kind of was erasing it and like it. I was like, I'm breaking her back more.
Yeah.
So like, it's not gonna work. But yeah, I think.
So one thing, because I'm mainly focusing on gesture, it's in order to push more gesture into it. Like this is one of the times where the lemon theory comes in super handy, I feel like, because you can see with this shape on her, this is just one big lemon, and like this just goes straight in and actually goes across the entire torso. So they've essentially combined the entire torso to one larger shape.
Yeah.
And that shape can also, like, if you really want to be adventurous with it, that shape can also lead straight to the thigh. Like, it can be even a larger lemon like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's one idea. This leg was also very flowy, and you've kind of combined these two into one straight. But these two curves aren't really describing the gesture as well.
Yeah.
So I'd push that, like this leg out for starters.
Yeah.
And Yeah, I'm just gonna try draw over this and just like put more, see if I can combine this edge together. I'm just using a lemon here just to show the from the thigh extending out. Her legs should actually be a bit longer as well, but that's more a proportion thing. But making longer legs in general like makes gesture feel better. It's kind of like a cheap trick, but like pretty much everyone does it, so it doesn't really matter. I would have like depending where you want to bend this knee, you can choose to bend it in or out depending how you want to exaggerate the pose. But I'd show like a strong crash onto this knee. So that I always leave like a little edge for like a little straight to show that the bone is sticking out. So for example, I'll just like leave a small indication of the knee. I just point it out a bit more. That's just a basic lemon right there. The angles of the foot. Yeah, one big thing is like kind of the weight. You've pushed the weight back onto like the ball of the feet, but hers are like borderline on the tip of the ball and more of the toes.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's more like it'll be here instead the weight. In terms of this other leg, I think this. Yeah, so I would make this more obviously a straight indication knee, and I'd probably. These curves are like this straight is too close to us. Oh, sorry, let me rephrase that. This should be a curve. Like it's almost, this line is almost like half straight, half a curve. If you want to show it as a straight and a curve, like it's okay to make that designer's decision, but like if you want to show it as a straight and a curve, don't make it like that. Like just make it a very obvious straight and a curve.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like if you have two lines that almost do the exact same thing, unless there's a very important like detail in your contour, 90% of the time you can just combine them and it'll look probably better. So like that, just one curve like that. And same with it going back into the arse here. Yeah. And this shape like here, this is one of like my favorite shapes on the body. It's just this shape of the calf. It's just like this really harsh triangle. And I'll definitely add that in. That's one of my favorite just designs in the body. Yeah, but you've done pretty well on the face. Like that's like it's quite good. You've actually put a lot of detail into it randomly compared to the rest. Yeah. So you have the angles of the shoulders. Sorry, last thing. So I'm kind of ragging on it a bit, but you have the angle of the shoulders, but it feels like they're almost in line in your pose.
Yeah.
But this feels like they're very tapered and like very on a different axis. And I would definitely just exaggerate that because that's one of her big aspects of her pose. And I'd also, by naturally tilting this higher up, this will go down for starters.
Right.
But this pinch and pull would be harsher as well. And you can show that in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes sense. Yeah, but this analysis is like pretty much spot on. Like there's these like sub rhythms going on. Yeah. That's perfect. You can also do one more sub rhythm here. Like there's a kind of natural arc. Oh, what am I doing? Okay, there's like a natural flow between. I'll just do it on her actually. This elbow, there's a force here that hits this corner of this elbow, drives back up into the head, follows the contour of the head, back into this arm, flows up here, and then flows back down this. So it's like this circle essentially, this rhythm that just circles around the head, and you can emphasize that in your pose by like essentially lining these up more, and having this almost flow back into this arm here. So that's another rhythm that's like could be pretty useful if you're designing it again. And did some faster ones as well. So how long did these take?
So the one on the left took about minutes, like 5
Yep.
5 minutes.
It's solid. Yeah.
And the other one maybe like 10
Alright, sick. Yeah. Yeah, this one is think it's like probably the most successful.
Yeah.
I find it really like it really communicates the pose extremely well. I kind of feel the tension in it as well. So if you think about the hierarchy of masses, the most important is still the torso, and I feel like fuck it, I'm gonna draw it. It goes from torso, head, arms, legs, and then the feet, and then feet, and whatever. I feel like you need to put more time into the torso because I feel like if you put more time in the torso rather than these other limbs, it would communicate the pose a lot better. I feel like a lot of the tension, interest in the actual pose is like not just from a gestural point, like the gestural point is the torso, but also from like this like kind of tension within the ribs and like his abs and sartorius or whatever, like bending in. Yeah. So once again, you've under exaggerated the pose a bit and just always just over exaggerate and you can pull back later.
I'm always like worried about like breaking stuff.
Yeah, I totally get that though.
Yeah, and like making it too realistic for me. But that's something that I need to like work on definitely. It's to not be so constrained, like restricted to being so realistic.
And it's good that you noticed that, yeah. I think you've also got the line, the axis of the shoulders and hips slightly wrong.
Yeah.
I think this is more straight, and this is more bent.
Yeah.
So the pinch and pull will be more like this. Why am I using green? Alright. Oh, terrible news. Alright. And now you know about like shape tapering and lemons as well. Like this is an obvious example to use the lemon stuff here. So yeah. But overall this pose is pretty good. Yeah, like you've spent a bit of time describing the toes. It's just things like that, like describing minor details as opposed to like really just focusing in on the torso. Yeah. And this one's pretty great. I think you communicate the emotion really well. The pose itself is quite strong, so it helps a lot. You have this rhythm here. That's great. This straight is very contradictory to the rest of this angle. I would combine that into one thing because it feels like just first of all doesn't feel anatomically correct, but it's also just it breaks the gesture too much.
Yeah.
And this you have a like almost like a circular shape here. I would completely remove that like weird circular shape, pull this so it's like almost its own shape, push the knee down, and then because this bottom of this calf is essentially touching the ground, I would just make it touch the ground and show that like ambient occlusion for the most part. You can add like a really small bump later to show like where it's has that slight bump, but for the most part because it's so close to the ground, you can practically imply that it's like being pushed onto it. I'm really liking this arm. This one's really good. You've got the torso really like down pretty well done pat here. This torso is like probably my favorite torso of all these. Yeah, but the main thing is just you're overcomplicating the limbs, I think, too much because they break the gesture. Like, and adding like two curves. General rule of thumb, this is very, very general, but I say like it works 70% of the time. When you have a straight on one side, the next line is very likely to be a curve. So for example here, you have this curve here, the next line's a straight, and then it's a curve, and then it's a straight again. So it's like, it goes interchanging. That's not always the case, but like, it's very likely to be the case. So whenever you have two curves like right next to each other, or a straight and a curve, be like mildly concerned that you're either overcomplicating it, or that you have one of the straights and curves are just wrong, like it's just not correct. Yeah. And yeah, I'll simplify it. Like this is the perfect example of like a shape that's too symmetrical. This arm here, like I can't really tell where the force is going. I'll just hard emphasize this is a curve, that's a straight, and it would crash extremely hard into that elbow, and then shoot straight back out into that head.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, good stuff there. Thank you for submitting. All right. Darlene. How'd you go? That's great. Yeah, solid. I guess I'll do these ones first. 30 seconds. Yeah, amazing. Really cool. So you have the major masses down. I will say it's pretty important in the 30-second pose to add your feet because it grounds the entire thing. Like it's honestly, especially if you're doing quicker poses. I see, like you see much the volleyball video here. Where the feet are can show like because all of these could technically be airborne, right? Because they have no foot, they have no grounding. And just adding the feet in will show whether or not they are airborne or grounded. So you've mainly just used like basic shapes to kind of describe it. That's pretty cool. For your lines of action, in a 30-second pose, I'd still say put your line of action in because I think that's kind of the main issue I feel like in these, where you have your line of action, but it's not. Because if you put in, okay, in the 30-second pose, basically, if you had your main line of action, you can build your three major masses, which you put in your head, your torso, and your pelvis on that line of action, and it'll feel correct. So if I like, because in this original pose, for example, it's very obviously like a harsh C, and you can tell his head. I'll draw a new layer. His head is here, his torso is here, and his pelvis pushes back a bit. And it's so he can like, this counter rhythm is so you can balance himself up. For yours, you've kind of de-emphasized it, and you've also like lost a pinch and a pull. That's another major thing in all these. I think you need to emphasize your pinch and your pull. This one's pretty good, but for these, like because you've drawn a simple box for them, you've lost a sense of a pinch and a pull, and it's one of the main aspects of the body that you should like have in your gestures the most. So this one's like fairly simple. You just like add that in like that, right? Do you know about? Do you watch much Ethan Becker at all? Ethan Becker? Have you seen many of his videos at all? Okay, so he has this one shape that I think is really useful. It's a the bean, the one bean that you should always draw. So it's basically this shape. It's basically a cube, but you have one pinch in it and one pull. Oh god, that's a terrible cube. So much shame. All right. So
More like a pillow.
yeah, it's a pillar or a bean or a flour sack if you're in animation. And what this implies is essentially, it's a very cheeky way, but he's saying this is the one shape you need to draw every single torso. So it's essentially a compressed bean, and this shape implies he uses this concept called implied form, where you have an edge here, like you can add an arm in here, and you can tell where the things are. And it's because this edge implies that this is one form, and this is another. So you're essentially showing two sides of a box. I think that's a really handy shortcut if you want to like, if you really want to get really good at communicating figures extremely quickly. So this is especially useful for storyboarding if you ever go down that route, or even animation. This simple bean shape will like communicate your pose like straight away because you know where the pinch is and where the pull is. And it's essentially this implied form that shows the twist and the top of the ribs bending into the bottom of the torso, into the bottom of the pelvis. Yeah, these are really cool. Oh, this line is just like blurry. Oh my god, that's crazy. Yeah, this is another one. So it kind of depends. I can barely see the actual pose, and I assume you kind of just guessed it because it's literally like 4 pixels. But if you imagine it in reality, you'd kind of, he'd be breaking his arm essentially, and that's a thing they do in animation where they break the limbs to emphasize it. But I think in order to like, you can have that, but I think you should indicate some sort of elbow to see where it breaks, and that would help it a lot. Like just even adding that little elbow in, and then having that still broken elbow limb, just feels a bit better because you can see like the force it hits the corner of the elbow and then it snaps his arm down, and I think that would emphasize that a lot. Yeah, but yeah, these 30 seconds are really cool. I'll just do your longer ones now, I'm assuming. Yeah. So how long do these take? pardon, sorry? An hour? Like each or each one? All of them? Right. Yeah, so these are solid. Like you're really building the forms out, I can tell. You're focusing a lot on form. I'm focusing mainly on gestures, so it's a bit harder to critique. But the forms are like very cool. You're building them out very well. So yeah, just give me a second. Sorry, I'm just thinking about which bit to think about.
Jay in the chat asked, where did the bones break?
Where did the bones break?
Yeah.
So it's like an animation. In that previous pose, it was like an animation thing where, like, it really emphasized if something's being hit. This bone is broken essentially, because you're snapping the bone of the elbow in half. But in animation, they do a lot to just emphasize like something's being hit really fucking hard. They do like a exaggerated thing and they snap the bone for like a frame and they make it back normal. Yeah. Yeah, like in smears. Yeah. Okay. So for the main thing, I'd say for a lot of these is that is my pen work? No, my control D stopped working randomly. Okay, I think Photoshop's glitched out. Sorry, I just have to restart it. Every time I press any key, it's like shift is automatically held down for some reason. I'll just save this document real quick. Oh yeah, Jay, you asked if you can use sound effects to describe the motion. Yeah, 100%. Like a whoosh or like a bang, like you can use that. Just make sure the sound effect is descriptive. So like a gentle whoosh or like a hard whoosh. Like a whoosh. That's a whoosh. Like if you can describe that in your head and it works for you, go for it. Yeah. Start back up, please, Photoshop.
Can you describe what a second year life drawing would be like for us first years or anyone that's interested in life drawing in general?
What do you mean by like? Sorry.
Like, what's the second year life drawing classes like?
They're pretty much just you go in and you like draw. Depending on your not really. Depends on your teacher. Yeah, like some teachers they give like a short demo and for like 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, and then you just pretty much go for it for the rest of the session. A lot of life drawing, you kind of just have to. Yeah, there's no knowledge instruction. I know Funky Monkey or Brian Lee's coming in this semester for second years as well, and he's like a very, very specific anatomy teacher, and he also teaches like essentially a modified Loomis method. So I'm assuming he's going to teach that to us as well.
Yeah.
So it depends on your teacher, but depends on what teacher you have. But if it's the normal teachers, the usual teachers that teach life drawing, it'll most likely just be very unstructured, and you just kind of go for it.
Yeah, yeah.
And he'll go around and critique your work as you, yeah. All right, sorry, let's just see my pen works again. Yeah, that's better. All right. Oh. Okay, so for this pose, I think the main issue is that you've added in the like the bumps of this anatomy. But they're none of them. They're all like very similar to a straight. Like they're neither a straight nor a curve. That's the main issue. It needs to be clear that they're a straight or they're a curve, because this could either be like it's such a gentle curve that it might as well be a straight. This straight is like this curve is also so gentle that it might as well be a straight as well. If you get that, so I just emphasize like this seems like, yeah. If you wanted like the gesture of it, I just go one straight curve for the entire thing, because having all these smaller lines slows your read a lot. And also this side of your figure would be the pull, which will be the simple side. So you want your motion to be really fast. And this side will be a complex side because it's the pinch. So you want your eye to go slower along here. But because you have both like extreme detail on this side and extreme detail on this side, none of them feel fast or slow. They feel about the same of like rigidity. So yeah, I'll just simplify this line as a whole. This stuff is this stuff is also similar, where you have neither of the side has a strong straight or curve, and I think like doing lemon thing might actually really help you a lot, because you'll understand what side to make it straight, what side to make it curve, and make it super decisive. So for this arm, for example, I'll definitely make this a curve and then this a straight, and then I'll do the opposite rhythm for the top as well. And that ties in with the fact that like just like 70% of the time, that rule of thumb where 70% of the time, if it's a curve first, the next line will be a straight. And and it applies in this case. So yeah, I'll just emphasize that this is a curve, this is a straight, that's a curve, that's a straight, and that would like help your gesture more. Yeah, same with the thighs and stuff. Having a strong curve here into a straight, and a strong straight into a curve. And when you build anatomy on top of it, yeah, I think you're just focusing too much on the contour as you go ahead. Like your gesture itself is like very, very good, but when you build on top of it, you need to use the gesture as a roadmap, because when you draw the contour, it seems like you're kind of just following the reference as opposed to using the gesture you built earlier to help with you following the reference, I guess. Did this image get cut off? Yeah. No, that's probably my fault. I'll just go get it again, sorry. Yep.
So I think there's another solution as well.
Yep. Yeah, this one's amazing. So it's like easily the best, and I think it's because you have simplified the lines. Like this is such a strong straight, and you still have that straight, and you still have these two curves on the bottom. This is like easily the best pose, I think, from all of these, and because it has such a strong gesture in terms of how you're showing these shapes. One thing I will say is that, yeah, this top reverse pull of this pinch, it's too many straights, and it's not like a strong rhythm, because this is already your straight here. This will be a curve instead. But yeah, this stuff, this leg especially, is like perfect. It's really well done on that. Another thing is when you break your... So I know you're doing construction still, but if you're building this further, having your limbs be connected asymmetrically. So like you've cut this limb here, but having like a very clear overlap like always helps in terms of showing which limb's in front, which limb's behind, and it adds more rhythm, because this line would end here instead, and this line would start here, and it'll continue off this line. So this feels more like a continuous line. And this one feels like a broken line, and the implied shape's more like this. Like two lemons, essentially, as opposed to like a line that stops like this and a line that stops like that. Yeah. But overall, like really good stuff. I'd just say, just keep going and try build on with your roadmap and have more clear straights and more clear curves. Yeah. And next is Alicia. Are you still online? Yeah.
No, at least he's here.
Oh, is she? Oh, hello. Yeah. So how long did this take? Like, not very long as in 2 minutes, or not very long as in like 20 seconds. Right. This is pretty solid, actually. Like, even though it's very loose, you've actually shown the gestures quite well, and you've actually exaggerated all of the aspects of it. So one thing is just having a more clear line, because you want to keep it clear and simple. Because this, having kind of scratchy lines like this, I can't tell if you want this to be a straight or a curve. The main, I'm just going to apply force to this because we just learned about it. But the main leading edge, I'd say, is probably either here or here, depending on how you want to choose it. So have a strong straight, I'd say, shoot into the back of this fight will be like the main feature of how I would design the pose. Or having a strong straight shoot into the shoulder. Because it feels like if you continue this pose to the next action, it will be either her shoulder tilting forward or her buttocks like going back up. This is one like the legs are probably the best time to use lemons, especially because lemons not only apply during the gesture phase, but they actually carry through to the finished drawing quite well for the most part. Especially if you look at like Glenn Keane stuff. Like there's an example of an animator that actually you can very, very clearly see the lemons in his work. Like they all built on just these simple lemon shapes, and they carry over to the final drawing extremely well, almost one-to-one at times, especially in like stuff like this. Like you can literally just see them. That's like very, very obvious. But obviously he includes it with his extreme anatomy knowledge and how he incorporates that in as well. Yeah, so for this, I just make this into a clear lemon. So that's a straight, that's a curve. This feels like a curve into a straight of the calf. I'd combine this. Yeah, you actually combined it already, which is really good. But just having like clearer lines overall is the main thing I'd say. And always like, if it touches, this is just like more of a trick to make it look nice, but if it touches the floor, just make it darker. And it just makes it easy to see where your weight is essentially on the body. You've made it to a straight, but I feel like it's actually a curve down because it hits the back of this calf here that you see. And then goes back into the foot again. There's a rhythm here where it rotates around this shoulder and it uses this shoulder's axis. So this is a time where you use applied force, where you have this shoulder here and you want to make it actually harsher than usual so that the rhythm that goes in recoils faster out back into this arm here. So I'd actually push that shoulder a bit to rotate it further than usual, just so it shoots out this arm faster. Yeah, but yeah, good stuff. I just really like how you've kept it loose, especially these arms. These arms actually describe it quite well, and the shapes you have like pointing them out are quite nice as well. Yeah. All right. Anyone else? Any more feedbacks to submit, or is that it? If you submit any throughout like the rest of this lesson, that's completely fine. But I'll just demo for the rest of it for now. And if you have any questions about force as well, yeah, just put your hand up and I'll get to you. We'll take another like short 5-minute break while I grab reference because I forgot to grab some.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Well, that's because that's because I didn't want to comment. Yeah, that's like really
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was he's teaching.
all right.
Rebecca. Next semester. Oh my god. Yeah. I was talking.
How have you been? It's been so long. What have you been doing? Honestly, I feel like I did like my work. So.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I didn't really make it. I didn't really. I mean, everything like my stuff.
Yeah, and then we're going
So.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was one of like she makes some suggestions. It was like a lot of exercises. Yeah.
Okay, well, something more. I'll stay with her. I'm afraid of it. Oh, it's Wait, I know they said
Yeah, we have like yeah, we got a lot of
well, it's like I think it overlaps. I think it basically overlaps the lag. Basically, they start here on the side and then on the and they attach onto the
Hello. I'm just doing my demo. But I'm just grabbing reference.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Because I just forgot to grab reference beforehand.
No.
Yeah, this lesson's got a lot better.
Are you the treasurer?
Yes. Wow. That's nice. Are you sure? Thank you.
That's already major actually. I think it pops up more. So it pops up like more.
It's an Instagram too.
Yeah,
It starts here and then it reaches underneath. Imagine like yeah, that's how you use it.
yeah. We're streaming it. We're streaming them. We're also live streaming them on Discord as well. It's right now. YouTube. We have Instagram Live. Instagram. No, Facebook. We're not streaming it. It's like, hey, it's on.
It's sort of just like attaching to the.
No, it's
yeah.
hard.
They do have a new look.
But I think
I
you-
have this. Yeah, I know. I literally have them. Yeah, I'm not. She said.
it's like- I think shapes like this.
Should we do a prize?
I don't know. I just tried to get the perspective. Like that. Yeah.
That wasn't.
Maybe also like.
Oh, what's that?
Yeah. Maybe like a special. Like special, you know how you can have notes? Like, I would have rules for like.
I reckon mine.
It's like.
Once you know all the shortcuts. But like.
Exposure. What?
So what are you signing up? So
It's
actually like one of my favorite.
like when it came out. But it's I'm like, oh my god, you're good. It's fine. It's June. It's June.
Yes.
We did it. What? Such.
One second.
Why are these
I'm calling it try.
Yeah.
I'm not being
Yeah.
I've tried that before with absolutely zero experience.
No, I'm being what?
Well,
That's me and Andrew.
Chris did say that he wanted to do it. Sorry.
we went to it like 10-year-old. Did you use that?
I lost to this private school kid.
Oh, we've been all.
Yeah, we did have a lot like that stuff. We had 9. Yeah. What's going on? My initial being it's long enough. And then what was awesome. I found how much I could do. I tried to do it like good. Oh,
I don't know, but I'm just thinking about
Keep a straight face.
I'm just like, I had a new campaign last week and I was
We're
like,
starting now?
and I have to be
I'm just gonna make mine. Yeah, pretty much. Just give me one sec.
No. I'll just try and let him try this again.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know. But I have
All right. Let's go. What? What?
Oh, William is. Wow.
What? Where would I see William's message? In CDW? Oh no. Oh no.
And
Wow, easy.
we all went.
All the generated CC, is that a thing?
So sorry.
We're actually really bad.
That's alright. We'll figure it out after.
Yeah.
Alright.
Are you doing the order thingy? Or
No, I don't know how to. It's too much effort to fix right now. If you want to Google it now, it's,
Does anyone know how to do the order generator? I don't know. Andy's like, well, I think it should. I'm not sure why it's so cool.
no, you can't do it. You have to do it after the video is done.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's just blacked out straight up.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Alright. Sit down,
Old man.
sit down, child.
Tell William. Go learn.
Alright, I'm gonna start up. If you want to draw along, feel free. I'll just be mainly analyzing these figures through force, so it's less about the original gesture stuff I did last week, but more, or yesterday I mean, but it's more just about force. So yeah, just draw along if you feel like. I'll do most of these poses about 10 minutes each, I reckon. But yeah. Start with line of action, angle of the hips and shoulders. The line of action is just a clear C. Shoots. You can shoot it to the end of the knee, but I'll shoot it to the back of the foot almost. Oh no, fuck that actually. End of the knee, never mind. Angle of the hips and shoulders. This one's fairly like straight, but I'll just, in my actual pose, I'll probably exaggerate it slightly. Find your leading edge. So where do you think the pose is going to go? It seems to me it's like a rotation, like he's rotating this arm backwards towards the camera, and he's rotating this shoulder away from us. So, and because of that, I'm going to exaggerate this hip, this shoulder line, put my leading edge on the shoulder or this elbow, probably the shoulder here. And I'm gonna exaggerate the twist of his torso to follow that as well. Oh shit, okay. I'll analyze the rhythms of the gesture as well. So there's one main rhythm here. From the back, his buttocks, leading up to this straight of the thigh, crashes on this thigh, and the straight down here, back into the foot. So this rhythm here. There's a rhythm here, from this pinch, which crashes onto this edge of the back and follows along. I would exaggerate the shooting of this arm down into the hip, kind of. And there's a strong pull from this curve into the edge of this elbow, and then back down. I'll also do a lemon analysis as well. Like, these are essentially all different ways of analysis, of analyzing this pose. So I'll also do a lemon analysis as well. Very obvious lemon here. And then a lemon here. Oh god, it's so slippery. Oh. So because this gesture's going this way, it feels almost like there's like a lemon halfway through here, but a larger lemon across this entire body, like this basically. This arm is like the main thing I want to focus on though. I need to decide if this is a straight or this is a straight. You can see like they're both really similar, but you have to choose one or the other. So just for the sake of it, I'm just going to say this is a curve because it crashes into the elbow, and this straight hits this edge. Because this is a straight, I'm gonna make this into a curve, and this is a straight to see what it looks like. And same with this. So I decide that this is the rhythm I'm going for. But just as easily, you can also just try the other way. So I'm just going to flip these, basically, and see what they look like. So instead of having a straight first... Sorry. Oh, I lost my color. So instead of having a straight on the bottom, I'm going to try and make the bottom a curve, and then top is straight. I'm going to make this into a curve, and this into a straight. And that personally just feels better to me. I think I'm probably gonna go with this pattern of straightened curves as opposed to this one. You can just feel through intuition like which one you like more. But I just personally like this one more. And now they have the lemons, like there's a lemon here as well. And the head's also technically lemon. You got like it's mostly straight, but it's just a slight tilt to the right, so that makes this into this. And you can feel the figures like being bouncing on itself, basically. But yeah, I'll just draw it now, basically. I'll put my analysis to the side so I can always like reference it. So as always, line of action first. Oh, my flow is really low. Yeah, line of action first. Angle of the hips and shoulders. I'm going to exaggerate the shoulder. Keep the hip mostly the same. This pull. This pinch. The bottom of the trunk is overlapping the top to show that. Oh. There's a straight here of this thigh which also overlaps this section of the torso. And at the side that was a straight, so I'm going to keep it as a straight. The lemon here. Just a gentle indication of the buttocks here. Because this is practically touching the floor, like I did with all those other feet earlier, I'm going to make that into a straight to show it's basically just touching the floor. And there's like weight on it. Focus on my leading edge here. So I want a really strong axis, like an apex, sorry, to show like the curve is being smashed. All the force is getting smashed into this edge here. I decided that was a straight and that was a curve, so I'm going to follow that roadmap I made earlier. This rhythm can be broken into two of this arm, but I might break it into two later in a later pass, but I'm just going to use it as one for now. And just have this shoulder fall into it, like this. In order to make the leading edge here, it feels like when he rotates his body in the next pose, it feels like this head's going to rotate towards this area here. And this torso is going to go like this. So in order to just show that already, I'm just going to push the head across this way to show that it's like rotating already. Basic lemon to show my foot. So straight in the bottom, curve on top. Another lemon to show the toes. The curve here. Another lemon here, very clear. And the same for the foot here. So lemon this way. And I'll just indicate this foot here. Alright, so for a second pass. Yeah, so most of my gestures are already down. I just need to fix like essentially proportions and so on. And just add detail to the sides. Oh. Why is this not working? There you go. I'm gonna add another line here to show kind of the armpit pinching in. Push this pinch, even though the actual pinch here is like kind of just a soft line into line. I'm just gonna exaggerate it and try show it as a like a twist, basically. Keep that as a straight. Push here. The thigh overlaps. Oh. Let's add a soft indication for the spine for now. Just add in this detail of this side. I'm trying to think like, should I add this secondary bump? But I feel like it would flow better if I just kept it all as one. Maybe just one indication of a straight here, and then into a flow here. Keep that straight to show it's touching the floor. Indication of the butt cheeks. Soft curve here. Do another straight. This leg's a bit too far out. I'll just pull it back a bit. Clear overlap to show the second part of the leg, the calf, overlapping the first part. It starts as a curve and then changes into a straight, I feel like. So I'll just show that. I won't focus too much on the feet, so I'll just keep it kind of similar to what I did originally. So I want to focus more on like refining the torso that I've done. Keep that straight. Curve. Indication of a straight to show the bone of the elbow. I'm actually going to change the rhythm here. I feel like, even though I chose this to be a curve and this to be a straight, I feel like it doesn't really fit. I think I'm going to try the other way and see what it looks like. Feels a bit better. No, I'm gonna try the original way, actually. Keep this as a curve, keep that as a straight. Indication of the elbow, another straight down. It's just a bit too high up. Finally, the head. With the head, like in terms of gesture, you kind of just have to draw the head. It's too strong of a feature, and like the way our brains have been coded to kind of simplify it or anything. Like you can simplify it like stylization wise, but in terms of just drawing the head, you more or less just have to draw the contour half the time. Or just design the head from imagination if you can do that. Yeah, I think that's a simplification of this pose. I'll just add in this last foot. And this knee. Yeah. Not too bad. I'll do the next image now. It's a bit funky in the desert. No, don't like that one actually. This is like kind of Predator-esque one. So, basic gesture analysis, line of action, easy C. You can even like elongate this C into the sword if you wanted to, but it's up to you. Near the center of the pose or balance. Angle of the hips and shoulders. And you have that easy pinch and pull. In terms of using lemons, there's a lemon here, which does the curve of this right side. And it shows the direction of this rib cage poking into this side of it. I'd say there's a lemon... somewhere here, I just need to figure it out. It feels more like it's bouncing onto this side and then hitting this side here. So lemon feels more like that. And the back of the thigh has its own lemon, which is this, which explains that form behind it, the pelvis. Same thing here, this one's a curve, this one's a straight, curve. Actually, yeah, this one's a straight, my bad, because it hits this knee here. And this one's a curve instead. And then the final foot. This entire leg can also be simplified into one lemon as well, just like a few of the other poses, because all the weight's on the tippy toes and all the curves are on the left side of it. Pull here of the lemon, straight, curve. This one's kind of 50-50, this forearm here. But because this one is a straight into a curve, I'm going to assume this is the curve and this is the straight because it points down into the handle. Like this arm is supporting it by pointing it here. And that's the lemon analysis of it. And I kind of just follow this roadmap for my pose. Just make this a bit more clear that that's a straight. Same thing as usual, the line of action first. Angles of the hips and shoulders. This one's probably a bit close to that, yeah. Pinch and pull. Shoulders is too exaggerated, that's why it's so long. So I need to under-exaggerate that, just to make it a bit more accurate for this one. Bottom lemon here. Indication of a straight for the elbow. Overlap of this straight. And just a simple indication of the hand, so it's a weird cube shape almost. I'm going to try to simplify this leg into one larger shape. So I have this rhythm from this side of the stomach lead into this leg. So I'll just point that at it. While keeping the curves on this side relatively the same. Small indication of a knee. And the second curve back down to the foot. And yeah, like I've combined this line essentially into this curve of the torso. And I just add a lot more gesture to it, which I might change in the second pass where I add more detail, but for now, I just want to keep it simple as I possibly can. Straight of this leg. Throughout the axis for heels, like the points of contact. So Bihoto here and this one here. Just copy that line across, pretty much. Let's make this a bit smaller because it's going off the page slightly. Curved lemon, straight on top, curve on the bottom, and just add in the sword. Just a simple line for now. And for the face, I'll just do a basic cube. Yeah, and that'll be the first pass. And it's pretty much the roadmap for what I want to build for next. Probably have to push this knee a bit further down and apply... She's really putting a lot of weight onto this knee, and then it shoots back into the ground. Feels more like that. So I'll just build on top of that now. Feel like I've under-exaggerated this rhythm too much of his leg. I'm gonna push it back out. I'm also gonna re-simplify it because I feel like I've overcomplicated the left side. And yeah, that's pretty much that. We have like 3 minutes left. Thanks for the clap, singular clap, but no. If you have any major questions, like feel free to ask me now. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll upload the PowerPoint and probably the demos online as well. And yeah, thanks for coming and all. Hope you had a good time.
Yeah, with nothing. Yeah, so thank you everyone so much for coming. I did not realize that these workshops would be so popular. They're great. Yeah, no, they're great, but, you know, I think we will make them for free now. I'm not sure, but like, it's up to everyone. But yeah, we've got a few other workshops free. We've got Alliance, which is sitting right there. Wait, no, that's not Orion. But on the Orion's not here. Oh, sorry.
Nice round.
I just realized he wasn't sitting there. Anyway, so he's teaching some Blender stuff. So if you guys are interested in like getting just 3D environmental stuff, so he's actually going to be doing some building your own kind of mini world in that. So that'd be really cool to do. Yes, but themed kind of thing. Yeah, he's got that on Thursday, and it'll be in this room as well. It's going to be another live stream on Thursday.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Yes, Thursday this week, and I've got my